And now we're going to hear from a representative of a government on the regulatory perspective. So we're going to discuss specifically the rise of blockchain in Singapore, and I'd like to welcome Sopnendu Mohanty to the stage. Sopnendu is the Chief FinTech Officer at the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which creates regulatory policies around tech innovation. And prior to his work in the public sector, Sop worked as the global head of the Consumer Lab Network and programs at Citibank. Please welcome him to the stage. Oh, either one.
Different one. Thank you. Thanks for having me here. I think what I'm going to do, spend the next 2 minutes not talking about blockchain. For a change. The reason I'm saying that because I need to layer the context of why, as a regulator, we do care about blockchain and what is driving our interest in this space. So let me paint for all of you about Singapore's macro effort around the whole space in fintech and the whole digital economy, the way we look at, and then I will zero into the blockchain space. The first block in our construct of a digital economy is something we believe very critical for us is the trust. Because it is going to be a presence-less, paperless, cashless society, it's very important for us as a country to establish certain public infrastructure as a policymaker, public processes which drives trust in the economy, given we are not going to see each other in this new economy, or we see less of each other. So the first 4 trust component in our own policy thinking is establishing a trusted digital identity, build trusted data hub, because in the world of fake news, sometimes it's hard to trust the data associated with different entity. How do you build trusted data hub is a big part of our thinking. And how do you build a consent architecture for our citizens so that they're empowered when they share this data to a third party and they know what is the purpose behind their sharing the data and the subsequent rights around if data is getting abused. And the 4th piece is rise of public infrastructure in this space of digital economy, which is going to enable the whole space. And there are implications of blockchain in that public infrastructure. And I'll share some examples. The second bucket is what are the technologies we're looking from a policy making, from a regulation perspective to enable this whole digital economy. We're looking at an open architecture, the API economy. As a regulator, in 2016, we published an open API guidelines for the industry to adopt so that, if you are working for a financial sector, the first thing compliance officer tells you, don't talk to a regulator, they'll not allow this technology. So to prevent that from happening, we went out in 2016 and we put together a guideline saying that go and build a system in an open architected way, put all the APIs out there. The second piece we think very critical for us, given this will be distributed in many sense, and we will talk today in our Q&A why we believe from a policy standpoint it is critical for us to look at a distributed computing as a key enabler in the future construct of technology. And the C part is the cloud computing. 2014, prior to my joining to MAS, there was a conference in Las Vegas. One of my ex-colleagues said that if you're going to use cloud, you'll go to the jail. And I think he came from the context of data privacy being compromised. But a few years later, MAS went public and said cloud is OK. And we put together a very comprehensive, maybe exhaustive in any sense, a cloud computing guidelines, which allowed the industries in Singapore, the fintech industry, to start gaining a lot of traction. And the last piece is the data and the AI piece, because more and more banks, asset management, insurance companies are going to use AI. So it's very important for us as a policy, from a policy point of view, put a framework in place so that AI is being used in a responsible way, while we don't restrict the utilization of AI in the new construct. And the last piece is talent. Without talent, hard to build all these things. We have put significant capital in Singapore, developing the new talent base on these 4 technologies. And also we put a lot of money. We put $225 million as a grant as a grant money to a lot of fintechs to come and do pilots and POCs with us. And last quarter, Singapore saw a $500 million of entrepreneurial capital going into the space of fintech. Policymaking via experiment. I'll talk about blockchain here. One of the old, typical central banker, when they think about policies, it takes 3 to 4 years. We put a white paper, we do a lot of public consultation, and by the time it makes it into the law and the parliament, it's probably 3 to 4 years. And by the time the technology is relevant, it's become a legacy system. So the whole policy making through white paper actually is a way to, from a regulator perspective, regulating legacy technologies. So how do you get rid of that trap is to do more experiment. So we use the term called policy making through experiments. We use a sandbox as a framework, which allows us to experiment with new technology as we can fine-tune our policies. And this is part of our DNA today. Every new technology, new product comes, you go through a sandbox framework. If we see no risk, we just let it go. And capturing the whole construct is the whole cybersecurity piece. Now, within that construct, you can see the word blockchain. And how did we end up in putting together a lot of effort in Singapore in the space of distributed ledger? As you know, there is today, if you Google MAS, there's an article which has come out, the Central Bank of Canada and MAS have done a currency swap using DLT. It's the project Ubin. It's one of the largest public experiment where many banks and 3 DLT companies are engaged, and it's a 5-stage project. And we started this experiment in 2016 as a policymaker, because we didn't understand what this blockchain means. So the best way for us to understand is to create an experiment. We funded this experiment. We got banks as a regulator. We can bring banks easily. So we got the banks into this game. We got 3 tech companies together. And we had a 5-stage project phase for this program. What we wanted to check, can I put my payment system into a DLT and a digital currency construct? We're in the 4th stage now. There's one more stage to go. What did we learn? We learned how to tokenize our Singapore dollar, put it on a DLT platform. We also learned how to use this as a wholesale payment system to settle between the banks in the domestic payment construct. We also learned how to use this to settle against securities. And this is the 4th stage, which went live yesterday, how to do cross-border settlement with other networks outside our jurisdiction to settle for a cross-border payment. And the 5th one will be settling foreign assets with our local digital currency. So this is a 2.5, 3 years project. What did we learn? There are certain compelling use cases which we think can get into production. One of the things which we think very compelling for us is the whole efficiency gain coming through cross-border payments. We don't see much in the retail bank digital currency, but definitely we see a lot of hope that we can remove a lot of inefficiency and settlement risk when it comes to cross-border payments. We also have started putting perhaps this will, I think we talked about it, this will be the first production-grade, high-skill infrastructure to be built in blockchain. It's called Global Trade Connectivity Network between Hong Kong and Singapore. The whole trade process, the trade transactions, the exporters, the importers, the shipping company, the customs will all get connected to this platform. It is scheduled to go early next year, where the trade and the trade finance becomes far more efficient, and they can connect to this platform. They can see all the trade. Different companies can bid for in an open marketplace for bidding their receivables to be financed, and banks can prevent themselves from fraud because there'll be no double dipping of the receivables for these financed ones. This infrastructure is getting put together, and once it goes into production, I think this will be the first instance where multi-country production-grade infrastructure being built on a blockchain platform. And I think we'll start seeing a transition between proof of concept to production in the space of blockchain. We're also putting an infrastructure called Trade Trust. This is tokenizing the trade documents using trade trust, because as different customs are exchanging document, so how do we ensure that we can tokenize this contract so that we can get rid of the paper being exchanged in the whole trade flow. So that's also a production grade infrastructure being developed and scheduled to go sometime next year. And what you saw, the three examples are where public sectors like us engaged in the process. These examples are from our private sector in Singapore. People are working on a capital market side. There's effort going around tokenizing corporate debt. In private equity space, again, a lot of effort is going to improve liquidity by tokenizing in a private equity exchanges. A lot of reference data today which you rely on centralized party like Reuters. There is an effort it's already gone to production where they can connect to different banks and share, mutualize those reference data instead of a central party aggregating the data. A couple of months back, our exchange and Deutsche Bank, DBS, and SWIFT went live with a pilot where shareholders can vote, do proxy voting instead of going through the broker and custodian. KYC, big part of our thinking of how to digitize the whole space. Interesting story here. We have today in Singapore put a public utility for Know Your Customer for retail, for individual customers. Then we embarked on building a corporate KYC. And we took the same centralized thinking into building the corporate KYC. We ended up with an estimate of $150 million. We thought it's not going to work because the business value didn't make any sense for us. So this year we are re-architecting the whole corporate KYC using DLT so that it can be done in a more efficient way. One of the challenges for corporate KYC is that a lot of the customers or accounts which banks onboard in the corporate side, their shareholders, their ownership are in multi-jurisdiction. Very hard to build a centralized system which is trusted, where the data can be pulled in as a trusted source. So they need to build a DLT platform to allow such trusted data to be shared. So do in insurance, many examples. One not in this slide, but close to my heart is that one which went to in our sandbox, in our centralized sandbox, is where MetLife put a DLT infrastructure for claim processing for pregnant women who get detected with gestational diabetes. And once during the routine checkup, that gets detected, an instant claim processing kicks in, and the settlement happens instantly. That went into production, and the whole experiment ended last month. We learned a lot of data. We collected a lot of data. We understood the process inefficiency, the complexity of hospital participating in such kind of multi-party exchanges of data, and we hope large part of insurance settlement, post-claim processing can be automated through DLT. So these are the examples we have in the private sector. In summary, I think there is in Singapore, we believe we have completed large part of our experiments and pilots. Next year will be the year of production for blockchain, and we hope to see some of this hype cycle getting into real cycle through this large public infrastructures being built out of Singapore. Thanks for listening to me, and we'll have some Q&A.
Thanks, sir. You can hold on to that.
Yes.
So thank you very much. That's great. I mean, first question.
Yes.
You know, I can understand why Ant Financial is so interested in blockchain and why a lot of companies are focused on it. Why is the government of Singapore so keen on it?
I think Singapore government is very paranoid about everything in life. I think being a small country, we are always looking what next. And in this age of digital economy, where you can get disrupted very quickly, it is important for us to be part of the game.
Right.
So in a physical economy, you can say Singapore is trusted, good life, good food, good government. You put your headquarters there, we are all happy. In the digital world, you can put everything in the machine, and the machine is running out of India. We are done.
Right.
So how do we ensure in the digital shift we are part of the game?
Yeah.
At least we want to be part of that whole process rather than stay away in some. The whole value proposition shift from physical to a server. which is outside Singapore.
I see. And I mean, it does seem like across the board, Singapore is very focused on whatever's coming next. I think I was there and they were testing flying cars.
Yes.
Flying taxis. That was pretty impressive. So you're taking a much less cautious approach than regulators in other countries, so including
I think we are taking a thoughtful approach, not a risky approach.
So fair enough. You're not risky, but would you say that the regulators in other countries are being too risk averse or being too cautious? What should they do?
There are 2-3 challenges. I think first thing, most jurisdictions don't have a framework to experiment, especially the policymakers.
Right, the sandbox.
The sandbox doesn't exist in many jurisdictions. The second part is a lack of talent. We have put a lot of effort in collecting, inviting a lot of talent to come to Singapore and spend their life there. As you know, and I was speaking to Neha, she asked me, how come Vitalik is sitting in Singapore? How can this person, Joe Lubin, spend time in Singapore? What is going there? So I think what we do, we attract a lot of talent to spend there and work with us and to help us to understand this technology better. And in whether blockchain or AI, anything. And the third thing we do, we focus on real use case. What's really important for our citizens? What is really important for our economy? And if this technology can make a difference, we will go after it.
Okay. And so what are some of the key use cases? What is like the standout use case for Singaporeans?
I think for us, trade finance is a big part of our thinking. How do we use the DLT technology? Of course, on the payment side, we have made a big headway. In fact, the Project Open source code is very strange to see a central bank managing a GitHub.
Right.
So it's a large part of our coding effort has gone into public space, and you can take the source code and replicate in your respect. So we're very open in developing what we do. We believe in open source in many of the things we do. Our reports are published openly so people can critique us and we learn from it. And we also are very eager to participate and collaborate.
Right.
Wherever we think there's a possibility, we go and partner.
Right. And so this is,
and we put money behind it.
This was
not free.
Behind the transaction with Canada. Tell us about how did that come about? Why is that so significant? Would you?
I think if you the genesis of that whole cross-border experiment was because let's say in Singapore case, today Singapore domestic payment is 3 clicks, 0 cost. If anybody in Singapore wants to send money from A account to B account, I can do it in 3 clicks, 0 cost. So we have got the most efficient payment processes in the domestic context.
Right, right.
So there's no real reason to put a blockchain and experiment that in, or a digital currency to make it more efficient. You can't get more efficient in 0 cost and 3 clicks.
Right, right. Yeah.
But we need to be efficient in our cross-border because that we don't control. And today, for a small value transfer, you have to pay $40. So at least from a use case perspective, for a small value transfer from Singapore to any country, if we can create true central bank ledger on a DLT and do a currency swap, I think we can dramatically reduce the time to send money from A country to B country. You can reduce the cost, and it's much more secure than what it is today. And so with the myriad of correspondent bank and a complex KYC, by the time you count all this inefficiencies, it's bizarre.
But at the same time, it seems like, as well as looking at what you can do for Singaporean citizens, your strategy is to build on Singapore's sort of traditional position as this financial hub, connecting places, right? Is that?
Yes, yes. Because we are a significant financial hub, trade finance, insurance processing, payment processing is a natural space for us to go and find better way. And if we are ahead of the curve, I think we have something to gain.
And so, we saw from the previous talk from Hui's the number of patents that big companies have built up, including especially in China, I guess.
I don't want to take a contrary position, but I haven't worried.
Okay, you're not worried.
My worry is that concentration of patent in new technology is getting in the wrong side. You look at 5G. Where is the biggest concentration of patent? You look at AI. You look at blockchain. I think we should start thinking of more open source, more collaborative, and this patent concentration can create economic disbalance, especially when everything is technology driven.
Yeah.
So while I do understand why my friend wants to have a lot of patent within Alley, but I think long run, I think we should look at more open source.
And how do you sort of seek to have an outsized, for a small country, an outsized influence in that global game, in that picture?
I think more we collaborate, more we share, more it's open sourced, more we bring other countries together, more we fund some of this research can bring a lot of countries to this whole space in a much more. I think one of the things we do focus in our whole experiments is interoperability, very close to our heart, because we don't believe Singapore getting smart is enough. We should get others around us to be equally moving in the same direction. So interoperating our systems, our products is a very critical part of our game.
Right. Not a bad time to be connecting East and West as well, I should think. So let's talk about going from, you were saying, that, the next year is going to be going from these sort of experiments, the sandbox, to industrial.
Yes, industry.
Right? Yeah, so what does that mean? And specifically.
It means that it's a serious business now.
Yeah, right.
No more fooling around with POCs and pilots. We have done enough for last 3 years. We have understood what works. We have understood how to get over some of these constraints. Will not say we have got full understanding, but wherever we have understood well, we will leapfrog. As we said in the whole trade finance space, absolutely no doubt. This is where both the industry and both the government can benefit to an industry get. Because in his slide, if you look, there's something called custom. Custom is government. If they don't get into a blockchain platform, he can't do anything. Same thing for clearing, for the banks to finance this trade. Unless banks get into the public platform, all the trade he's creating will not get financed efficiently. So for the private sector, for the government to get industry-get blockchain-based or DLT-based trade finance is a must. And that is, to my mind, I may be wrong, there are people brighter than me in this room, I think that will be the most visible short-term production-grade shift from this world of pilots and POCs.
Okay, well, shall we take some questions from the smarter people out in the audience if there are some questions? Well, one thing, specifically, in terms of industrialization of the technology or making industrial grade tech, what about the security side? You're betting big on this, and we're seeing that there are sometimes these weak spots. So how much are you investing in that?
Well, cybersecurity is part of if you look at slide, it's kind of overarching, it binds everything together. So we do focus on security a lot. But I think one of the things which I think we talked about is the whole data piece. I think we'll get into that.
Yeah.
So which I think that's the biggest concern to me.
So go into that.
So I think as a policymaker, if one thing worries us, one thing can derail this whole blockchain AI thing is the rise of data nationalism.
I think it's
every country are getting into the wrong side of policy making when it comes to data. They're trying to wall garden the data. They're saying data is private. We cannot get others to access. I think if that remains the trend, what AI is going to run? If what distributed ledger is going to run, if I can't even move from my country to the other country because they'll restrict me to using it. But in a way, DLT helps. What DLT does, it allows us to operate in a data without being moved to a different jurisdiction. We can run the processing at the different jurisdiction, run the AI, get the insights, without have to physically move the data. In a very ironical way, DLT does help to get over the policy barrier of data nationalism, but I think as a policymakers, we should think of more interoperable data corridors. And if we don't do that, I think all this expectation of AI, blockchain, cloud running in multiple is just going to the wrong
I think
direction.
that's a great point. That is going to be a problem. So are you working on sort of approaches for managing that data?
Yes, so I think we will see a trend like the free trade agreement, free data agreement.
Free data agreement, okay.
Bilateral data agreements.
Okay.
Corridors of data being exchanged between trusted party and be trusted infrastructure running these data corridors.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so last chance for some questions. Okay, we do have someone right at the back and one other one. Okay.
My name is Chirag. This is very interesting, the work that you are doing. I was wondering if you have come across challenges with respect to performance and throughput. I know you want to do it fast. You want to have the transactions done quickly. If you have come across those challenges with DLT, how have you?
Yes, yes. One of the hypotheses we looked at in our experiment, volume of transaction, velocity of transaction come in between. If you look at a use case, they're not volume intensive, except the cross-border payment. In a cross-border payment, it will be a permission one. I think there are technology. If you look at a report where we have found ways to get over the velocity question, if you take payments out, most of the use case today may not have velocity impact in the use case. More we focus on the trusted side of the whole ledger process. But yes, we have looked at a couple of solutions. We tried a couple of solutions to get over the velocity question. And still, there's a real issue in our latest report on the cross-border. We did encounter some of these challenges. But again, I believe, again, smarter people in this room will help us to get over that.
Okay, well, let's hope so. Okay, one more question. Sorry, there was one just before you. We'll try and get yours as well.
Hi, my name's Roger. This is actually a little bit more of a central banking question as well as blockchain. So you mentioned the case of currency swaps, which I find really interesting. Obviously after the financial crisis, the use of currency swaps was a huge part of the US at least helping non-US denominated banks be able to still pay down their debts. So I'm wondering if you can comment on how many other central banks are open to using DLT for that approach, and if you can't, whether or not you can comment on the scale or basically like the impact DLT might have on that particular issue.
I think it's a good question. We started with Bank of Canada. We have interest from Central Bank of South Africa, and within ASEAN, a couple of banks are working with us on the use cases. Yes, one we were discussing during lunchtime is perhaps if you know the CLS system, which has got 20 odd currencies. If anything outside that, we will see a lot of application of DLT on such non-CLS currencies in that space. But that's to be observed and tracked how it goes.
Okay, very, very quickly, last question. I'm probably going to get in trouble going over, but...
Hi, one clarification that I wanted to ask you was, the sandbox pilot was actually done between the two central banks, is that right?
Yes.
My question is about the Singapore's need to influence what's happening in APAC region. So is the government and are you working with the other neighboring countries on this?
Yes, we have extensive collaboration with our neighboring countries in payment infrastructure. You will soon hear from us our partnership with Indian government on the India stack piece, which is coming out to become some different stack soon. So you will see this year, late this year, a lot of multi-jurisdiction collaboration in this space of cloud computing, national digital identity payment stacks, and some of the application of blockchain, AI, and data and cloud together on AML investigations, anti-money laundering investigation, where we are not allowed today. One of the challenges, challenge in AML investigation is that how to extract data from cross-border when you're on the process of investigation. Maybe AI, DLT, cloud can be used in combination to do that in a thoughtful way without affecting different jurisdictions and restriction.
Right. Wow, cool. Well, I look forward to hearing more about that. Okay, we are out of time. Yes. Please give Sop a big round of applause. Thank you. That was really interesting. Wonderful. Thank you so much.